I was folding my favorite travel shirt, 4 hours from boarding a flight to Rome, when a text from my daughter changed everything. "You're not coming. Darien wants this to be just family." They took his parents instead. And it happened right after I'd paid off their new house, so I stopped their mortgage. I put the house up for sale. And by the time they landed back home, they didn't have a house to come back to. Let me back up. I was 58 years old, sitting on my bed with a half-packed suitcase, humming an old Sinatra tune, picturing myself walking the streets near the Vatican with my daughter Celeste. The tickets were on my nightstand. The forecast was clear. Everything about that afternoon felt like the beginning of something good. Then my phone buzzed. Celeste's name lit up the screen, and I figured she was calling about the airport, maybe last-minute details. Instead, I read a text that made my stomach drop through the floor. Darien had decided this trip should be just family. His parents were going instead. I read it 3 times, waiting for the words to rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. I was the one who planned the trip. I bought the tickets. I built the itinerary at my kitchen table over a dozen late nights. And now I was the one being told I wasn't family enough to come. I typed back one word, "okay," and sat there with my open suitcase, my travel-sized toiletries lined up like little soldiers for a war that had just been called off. I called the airline. I canceled. The woman on the phone was kind, and I could hear in her voice that she'd picked up on exactly how gutted I sounded. That night the house felt too quiet. I sat in front of the television, not watching it, scrolling my phone out of habit more than curiosity. That's when I saw it, Darienne's parents in front of the Colosseum, captioned "Beginning of the best family vacation ever," posted 2 hours earlier. My thumb froze. Maybe it was an old photo. I clicked through, same trip, same day. And there at a cafe table near the Trevi fountain, wine glasses catching the light, were all 4 of them, Darienne, his parents, and Celeste. Her caption, "So grateful for family time in the eternal city." I counted the faces like I was counting evidence. 4. The word family burned itself into me. I looked at my reflection in the dark kitchen window and saw an old man standing alone in a house full of someone else's warm lights next door. I barely slept. In the morning, I called Rome. Celeste answered, bright and breezy, street noise behind her, Darienne's laugh somewhere in the background, oblivious. "I saw the pictures," I said. "Darienne's parents are right there with you?" The pause told me everything before she spoke. "Dad, we can explain. You told me it was family only." Her voice went cold. "Darienne said you can be too much to handle. He didn't want you messing up his vacation." Too much to handle. I'd funded her wedding, $42,000, so every detail was perfect. I'd paid off her student loans when Darienne couldn't find work. I'd co-signed their mortgage when the banks turned them down. $95,000 of my retirement had gone into their down payment. I'd covered car payments, credit card bills, canceled a fishing trip with old friends, turned down a woman from my book club who'd asked me to dinner, all because Celeste needed something. "I helped support you," I said. "That was something you decided to do," she snapped. "We never asked you to guilt us about it. To be honest, Dad, Darienne was right. You need too much attention." I hung up without saying goodbye and sat in my home office surrounded by decades of photographs, teaching her to ride a bike, walking her down the aisle, holding her as a baby. Every image now looked like evidence in a case I hadn't known I was building. I understood, finally, the difference between being loved and being useful. They hadn't wanted me. They'd wanted my wallet. My hand hovered over my laptop, ready to do something rash with the joint bank access I'd given Celeste years ago. I closed it instead. Impulse wasn't the move. Then my phone pinged, a bank alert. $892, a restaurant in Rome, 3 hours ago. Celeste was using my authorized user card, the one I'd given her back when she was building credit, to fund the very trip that had excluded me. More charges followed: boutiques, hotels, attractions, while Darienne's parents supposedly covered their own way. That settled it. I pulled up the card portal and hit Remove User. Confirmed. For the first time in days, I felt something like control. The next morning she called, furious. Her card had been declined at lunch in front of Darienne's parents. "You humiliated me," she said. "That must have been embarrassing," I said, sipping my coffee. "Fix it, or there will be consequences." "What consequences?" "Darienne and I have been talking." When we get back, we're looking into care facilities for you. You're aging, Dad. You can't manage your money. We'll sell your house. You don't need all that room. I sat with that for a long moment. My own daughter, threatening to institutionalize me and sell my home because I'd cut off her vacation spending. I told her no and hung up, but her threat reminded me of something. I went to my filing cabinet and pulled the deed, not to my house, to theirs. The house on Oak Avenue, the one I'd bought outright 3 years earlier so they could get approved for financing, was still in my name alone. "Just for the mortgage approval, Dad," Celeste had said. "We'll transfer it once things settle." They never had. Too busy, always next month, next year. I called Kai Nakamura, the realtor who'd sold me both properties. "I need Oak Avenue sold." Fast, he didn't ask many questions. Kai was good like that. The market was strong. He thought we could get 215, maybe 225 against the 148 I'd paid. I signed the listing that afternoon. Then I called a mover named Brent, family-owned, no corporate script. "Whole house needs to be packed and stored tomorrow morning if you can." He recommended a storage facility down the street, Safekeep, a 10x20 unit, first month up front. Everything set in under an hour. The next morning, I met Brent's crew at Oak Avenue at 7:45. Walking through those rooms, the sectional I'd bought them for Christmas, Darienne's gaming setup, Celeste's overstuffed closets, felt strange, like inventorying a stranger's life. In a closet, I found their wedding album. I wasn't in more than 2 photos. In what would have been a nursery, baby furniture they'd never used. For a second, doubt crept in, was I being too harsh? Then I found Darienne's credit card statements, all luxury spending, while they'd cried poverty to me for years. The doubt evaporated. By noon, the house was empty, everything boxed into Unit 52C. I handed Brent cash and a good tip. Then Kai called with even better news. A young couple, Caspian and Nora Mercer, wanted to close immediately. Cash offer, $228,000. We closed Friday morning. I watched them walk through the empty rooms, Nora admiring a garden she thought I'd tended. Saturday, I drove by to watch them move in a U-Haul, a crib going through the front door, Caspian building a swing set. I was still parked across the street when a taxi pulled up. Celeste and Darienne climbed out, jet-lagged and confused, straight into the sight of strangers unloading furniture into what they thought was their home. "Excuse me," Darienne barked at Nora. "What are you doing in our house?" Caspian stepped up with paperwork in hand. "Your house, we closed yesterday." I got out of my car and walked over, an envelope in my jacket pocket. Celeste's face went from confusion to fury the moment she saw me. "Dad, what is going on?" I apologized to Caspian and Nora first. They were innocent in all this, and told them to go on inside. Then I turned to my daughter and son-in-law. "The house was sold because it belonged to me. It always did. It was never transferred into your names." Darienne's face went red. "That's insane." "This is theft. We'll sue you for everything you're worth." "With what money?" I asked. "Your cards got declined in Rome, remember?" Celeste's voice cracked. "Where are our things?" I handed her the envelope. Inside, the address of Safekeep Storage, Unit 52C, first month already paid. Darienne crumpled it in his fist. "You can't do this to family." "Real family," I said, "doesn't exclude their own father from a vacation he paid for. Then call him needy for objecting." I left them standing on the sidewalk with their Italian luggage, looking like tourists who'd wandered into the wrong life. Behind me, Darienne shouted that this wasn't over. I got in my car and my classical station picked up right where I'd left it. It was over. 3 months later, a process server handed me their lawsuit. That same afternoon, my lawyer called with the ruling, dismissed. The house had always been legally mine to sell. They were on the hook for their own attorney's fees. The local paper even ran a short piece on the dispute. Around town, opinions were mixed. Some thought Darienne had always seemed entitled. Others muttered that family should stick together no matter what. I let it all roll off me. That week, I adopted a golden retriever named Ranger, 3 years old, needing a home because his family was relocating. He climbed into my passenger seat like he'd been waiting for me his whole life. And that first night, for the first time in months, neither of us slept alone. A few weeks after that, I traded in my second car, dipped into savings, and bought a 28-foot Airstream. Ranger claimed the front seat before I'd even finished the paperwork. I packed camping gear, his leash and bowls, and one photo album, pictures of Celeste as a little girl. Before all of this, before I confused generosity with love and got manipulation back in return. The morning we left Cedar Falls, I drove past Oak Avenue one last time. Caspian and Nora's kids were playing in the yard, the house finally filled with the kind of happiness it was always meant to hold. I kept driving. The highway sign read Montana, 850 miles. Ranger had his head out the window, ears flapping, and my hand was steady on the wheel. That evening we pulled off at a scenic overlook, the sky going orange and purple behind the mountains in a way I'd never once stopped to notice before. Ranger settled at my feet, asking for nothing but my company. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, not useful to anyone, not required, not needed for my wallet, just free.